Hey guys, welcome to another Games I Played video. My previous one was on horror games, but here, I'll be talking about random titles that I've played throughout the past year. So yeah, I hope you guys find something you like. Enjoy! The first game is Sonic X Shadow Generations. I absolutely love the original Sonic Generations game, and I'd go so far as to say that it's one of the best 3D Sonic games. The biggest problem it had was that it was really short, even though it was very replayable. Sonic X Shadow Generations adds more to that experience by including Shadow's campaign. But before I talk about the X Shadow part of the game, let's briefly go through Sonic Generations. As much as I like the original game, I didn't really pay attention to the story, so I'll just summarize it in my own way. A shadowy looking creature sucks classic Sonic, along with modern Sonic's friends, into different portals, and the game's story is basically an excuse for both Sonics to go through different levels from their past games. I only played about an hour or two of this since I got way too tempted to go into the X-Shadow part of the game, but I still had lots of fun. The levels are great, with lots of platforming, cool action sequences, and iconic boss battles. Oh, and as expected for a Sonic game, the music's amazing. Other than that, it's pretty much the same game, except there are chows. Yeah, you can collect chows throughout the game's various stages, and they look really cute in the hub world. But you know what made me even more excited about this? The fact that the 3D models of all kinds of chows are in the game, and they have cute little animations. Why put that much effort into collectibles? Could it be a sign that Sega's finally adding Chao Garden into a future Sonic game? Time will tell. But anyway, my inner Sonic fangirl came out. Let's move on to Shadow's campaign. I'm sure most people who are interested in this game are probably in it for Shadow after all, especially since Sonic Movie 3 came out in the same year, and it turned out to be an incredible movie. So Shadow's campaign tries to tie the story in with Sonic Generations, showing what he was up to while Sonic was going through the main part of the game. His backstory is recapped, and I feel like his side of the plot is more narrative-driven and full of spoilers, so I'm just going to skip it. All I'll say is that it made me cry a little. Just like Sonic Generations, you'll just have to go through levels from past games that included Shadow. Something that caught me off guard with this game, though, is how it's obviously newer compared to Sonic's campaign. The graphics and animations are clearly much higher quality, and when you get to play through the actual levels, oh man, the next-gen tech really shines through. The levels can shift and change, leading to awesome set pieces. And that says a lot considering how Sonic Generations had lots of cool sequences. I'd say that Shadow's campaign is kinda difficult though. Compared to Sonic, you unlock way more mechanics as you progress through the game. He'll gain special abilities that help him navigate both the hub world and the different stages. The levels themselves were tricky as well, but it made sense in a way. You can choose to play either Sonic or Shadow Generations in the menu, but it kind of feels like Shadow's campaign is a more advanced version of the whole Generations experience, so I feel like it's best played after you've completed Sonic's story. But that's just my opinion though. If you want to play as Shadow first, I'd say go for it. I highly recommend Sonic X Shadow Generations if you want a speedy platforming game. I think that it's the definitive version of Sonic Generations. Despite completing Shadow's campaign in maybe 5 hours, it has lots of replayability, collectibles, and challenges to complete. I actually have a combined playtime of like 42 hours on both Sonic Generations and Sonic X Shadow Generations, so that says a lot, I think. The game's out on every platform. The second game is Sons of the Forest. It's been a super long time since I've played this, so my memory might be hazy. Luckily, I had some gameplay recorded back then, just in case I wanted to talk about it in a video, so here we are now. I love the original game, The Forest, and this sequel felt like it leveled up all of the mechanics and overall experience. Oh, and just a heads up, the game was in early access for a while, but when I played it, it was already in version 1.0, so yeah, these are my thoughts on the full game. So similar to the first game, Sons of the Forest puts you in the shoes of a character who's trying to find missing rich people on an island full of cannibals. I'm not sure if there's a specific protagonist actually. All I know is that you spawn as different people from a rescue team when you're playing the campaign in online co-op. But yeah, you basically have to survive on the island and defend yourself from cannibals and creepy mutated creatures while trying to find a way out. You can play this game solo, but you can also play it with up to 8 people. I personally think that the game is a blast in co-op though. It has standard survival game gameplay, where you have to chop wood, hunt, and build your base using blueprints, but there was just something amazing about it. Things like chopping trees and going through your inventory felt oddly satisfying. And I say this even though I've played a lot of survival games on PC. But I think that Sons of the Forest is one of the best ones out there. Heck, I'd say it's even better than The Forest. It just has a lot of quality of life improvements and really cool mechanics like the companion system with one of the game's main NPCs. You can tell him to fetch food, gather materials, and help build structures. I ended up getting quite attached to him because of that, and it made my home base with my partner feel so much more cozy knowing that he's there. At least until the cannibals attack. Yeah, they're a constant threat in Sons of the Forest. Their AI is similar to the cannibals in the first game, so their behavior differs depending on what you do. Sometimes they'll be passive but observant, watching you from the trees. Other times they'll ambush you out of nowhere. It went from annoying to quite scary depending on the time and place, but they became a bit more manageable when you get better weapons and armor. But yeah, with Sons of the Forest, it was just really fun exploring the island, going into caves and discovering new things. I also like the added convenience of having more modern technology in the game, which range from tools and equipment to even simple things like how the map in the game is a GPS system. It made so much of a difference, especially when you acquired more stuff. I gotta warn you though, this game is very addicting. Like, my partner and I could not stop playing. We ended up playing hours on end, sacrificing sleep. It was just that good. It took us around 24 hours to complete the game overall, and we loved it from start to finish. I highly recommend Sons of the Forest if you want to play a really good survival game, whether it's solo or co-op. Sons of the Forest is out on Steam right now. The third game is Lorn's Lure. I remember seeing the dev tweet a clip of this game on Twitter last year, and I thought it looked really cool, especially since it's inspired by things like the manga Blam. I still haven't finished the manga, but the atmosphere and dystopian setting left such a long-lasting impression on me. But I got really excited when I managed to get a key to stream the game. Lorn's Lure has a similar world with its dark ambience containing megastructures, but sadly it didn't match my expectations when I tried playing it myself. So Lorn's Lure is about an android that leaves his home colony to find a way out of this massive structure that he resides in. After following some kind of glitch, he ends up getting lost for over 200 years, and since his energy core won't run forever, he's determined to keep looking for it until he finds some answers. I was instantly invested in the game after learning about the story. It just seemed so interesting, and again, it felt very much like Blam, and the first level really leans into that with all of the tech and vast open areas. Now, what's both interesting and disappointing about the whole experience is that it's actually a parkour game. You'll be platforming and using pickaxes to climb walls, and the goal is to follow the glitch throughout the level. It was actually fine at first. The first chapter was a bit challenging, but I had more fun than anything, and I was completely immersed because of the atmosphere and scale of things. But chapter 2 onwards is when the game starts to show its true colors. It's not just a parkour game, it's a very difficult parkour game. Like, you literally have to platform in the strangest ways to either go up or down an area. It almost felt like I wasn't supposed to go in certain directions, but for some reason, the game wanted me to. and it didn't help that your pickaxe wouldn't work on specific materials, so you had to slide or do weird tricks in order to climb or go across platforms. So yeah, the gameplay loop is basically trial and error. The moment you fall, you can either keep falling until you respawn, or instantly load the nearest checkpoint. This is why it got frustrating really fast for me, and it didn't help that most of the levels I played after Chapter 1 didn't have the same wow factor to it. I ended up just playing up to Chapter 4 and dropping the game because it became way too much for me. I feel like I would have liked it more if it was a narrative-driven experience with less frustrating gameplay. Like the lore and some of the robots I met were genuinely fascinating. It made me wish that the game let me explore those aspects, instead of slowly draining my sanity from its bizarre level design. Like, I'm pretty sure that when I got stuck in some of the later levels, I just pulled up a walkthrough video both on and off stream, just so I could see how someone else managed to find a way forward in the level. So yeah, this is why I don't know if I can recommend the game to most people. I think it might be fun for people who like speedrunning and maybe doing some extreme problem solving in platformer games. But personally, I ended up just watching the ending on YouTube after playing through 4 chapters in almost 5 hours. It made me glad that I didn't force myself to play through the last half of the game, because it would have really soured the experience. Still, if you want to try it yourself, Lorn's Lure is on Steam. The 4th game is Harvestella. This is probably one of the longest games that I've streamed on my channel so far. Like, I'm pretty sure there's a total of 18 parts. But yeah, it's a game that I've been curious about ever since it came out. I know it was released around the time that Square Enix released some not so amazing JRPGs. I thought that Harvestella seemed interesting because of its gorgeous graphics and character designs. The game looked like a cross between Rune Factory and Final Fantasy, and it turned out to be exactly that. It had chill farming mechanics and bits of a traditional FF storyline. But what I didn't expect was how mind-boggling the plot would become. So Harvestella lets you play as a character who wakes up during quietus, some kind of weather phenomenon that arrives at the end of every season, and it can make people very sick if they choose to stay outside. But since you're the main character, none of this affects you for some reason. The main story basically has you searching for the mystery of why quietus exists, and what's making it last longer each passing year. So as you try to find answers, you'll end up meeting other characters, forming your party, and going through dungeons together. Though I'd argue that the real main story is the little crappies. You get to live on a farm early on, and it becomes very easy to get distracted by it. Oh, and don't get me started on the amount of side quests and even the fishing minigame. The only thing that really stopped me from going too crazy with it was the fact that I was always broke. Yeah, for some reason, this game never made me feel like I had enough money. I think a big part of it is because you don't earn it by defeating enemies like traditional JRPGs. You only get it by completing side quests, or doing food deliveries and planting the right crops. But despite that, I was addicted to the game. I loved that it had a mix of farming and fighting, so if I felt like I was falling asleep from the cozy aspects of the game, I'd just continue the main quest and go fight enemies. Something that I found interesting about the game though is that it felt very safe for the most part. It never really excelled in anything in particular. The farming mechanics and combat weren't as complicated as other games in the same genre. Bits of the story, like the character quests, felt like Persona since you can level up relationships, but they all seemed to follow a similar formula. It just felt like the game was a checklist of mechanics and JRPG tropes, never going beyond ticking the boxes, at least until the later parts of the game. Yeah, I can't really say too much, but oh god, the story just went crazy in the last half. It genuinely kept me hooked because I didn't expect it to turn out that way. Like, there were signs throughout the game, and even some foreshadowing in some of the party members' quests, but the plot kept me guessing up to the point where the game started to reveal more things. That's all I'm going to say about that. Overall, I really liked Harvestella, even though it felt like a standard JRPG a lot of times. It was just fun and relaxing to play. All of the crazy stuff that happened later on just felt like a surprise cherry on top. It took me around 68 hours to beat the game, and I recommend it, particularly on PC. The game is on the Switch as well, but it apparently has really long loading times, so yeah. It's on Steam if you want to play it yourself. The last game is Europa. I remember seeing this game before it came out, and I thought that the environments looked so pretty. It looked like a Studio Ghibli film, with its blue skies, lush grass, and colorful flowers. When I managed to play the game, it ended up being a pretty decent experience with an interesting story. Europa has you playing as Z, an android that wakes up on Jupiter's moon, Europa. And the reason why it looks like this is because it's been terraformed by humans. But the thing is, humans are nowhere to be found. Only animals and ruins of their civilization remain. So Z ends up searching for answers in Europa, while learning more about the world by reading entries from his father's journal. I'm sure you can already tell, but the game's very peaceful. Playing through it felt almost zen-like, and it helps that the controls are simple too. You just have to jump, float around, and solve simple puzzles in order to progress to the next area. And along the way, you can collect crystals, find upgrades for his jetpack, and pick up more journal entries from Z's father. At its core, Europa is a story about humanity's relationship with nature. I know it's been overdone in a lot of stories, but I thought that the way Europa handled it was endearing. Though personally, I just enjoyed existing in the game's gorgeous environments. I think that the Ghibli-like graphics are the best aspect of the experience. My only complaint is, I don't think Z's model matches it. I don't know why. He just has a different style that took me out of the game. Maybe it's because deep down, I associate the game's Ghibli aesthetics with, well, the studio's character designs. But it didn't bother me too much, especially since the game's only like 3 to 4 hours long. I recommend Europa though, especially if you want a short, relaxing game to play through. Europa's out on every platform. Let me know what you thought about the video, and like and subscribe if you liked my content. Thank you to my patrons at Patreon for supporting my channel. I'll be doing my usual full game reviews next. I won't be super subtle, so I'll just say that it stars a ninja guy. Oh god, that was awful. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.